The average health app retains 3% of its users by day 30. Not 30%, 3. That means 97 out of 100 people who downloaded your product are gone before the end of the first month. This video is about why that happens and what the 3% who stay have in common. You build it, you launch it, and then nothing. The onboarding numbers looked fine. Maybe you got some enthusiastic early users, but a few weeks later, engagement flatlined. Hospitals aren't renewing. Patients are coming back. Investors are asking sometimes difficult questions. This isn't a quiet crisis in health tech, not a dramatic failure at launch, a slow bleed after it. After more than 75 health tech projects, I can tell you, the patterns are predictable. Here are 5 reasons health tech products fail after launch and what you can do differently. The most dangerous moment in health tech is when a founder says, "I know what clinicians need," without having actually worked alongside them. This isn't a criticism, it's a structural problem. A founder sees a real problem, builds a solution, it works beautifully in theory. But when it arrives in real clinical environment, nurses and physicians says, that's not actually the hard part. By the time you discover that mismatch, after months of development, after your first pilot, you're not fixing a feature, you're questioning the entire product vision. The most important question in health tech isn't, can we build this? It's, are we solving the real bottleneck or just the most visible one? Those are rarely the same things. Camino came to us with an idea for a smart walker for elderly users with mobility challenges. The startup instinct is prototype fast, ship an MVP. Instead, the first phase was discovery, intensive interviews, not just with users, but with therapists and psychologists who work with this population every day. What came back changed everything. The real problem wasn't just mobility, it was isolation, fear of falling, loss of independence. Features that seemed obvious without the discovery would have missed the actual need entirely. Camino officially launched in 2025, 5 years after that first discovery phase. That timeline wasn't slow, it was moving in the right direction because the problem was understood correctly before anything was built. The fix isn't more surveys, it's being in the room when the problem actually happens. So validating not just that the problem exists, but that your solution fits how people actually live and work. If your team can't answer specifically how your problem improves outcomes in the real context where it will be used, you don't have a product problem yet. You have a discovery problem. Solve it before your first sprint, not after your first pilot. Here's a belief that kills more health tech products than almost anything else. If we build something genuinely useful, people will use it. In consumer apps, that might hold. In healthcare, it's almost always wrong. Poor workflow compatibility is one of the biggest barriers to digital health adoption. Not because the products are bad, but because clinicians don't build that habit. A busy week hits, the old habit kicks in, the new tool gets skipped once, then twice. With a month, login rates drop 80%. The same happens with patients. Someone downloads your app after a diagnosis, motivated and engaged. 6 weeks later, they've stopped. Not because the app broke, because there was no feedback loop, no signal that their data was going anywhere meaningful. Eargo makes smart hearing aids. Their core user has often never paired a Bluetooth device in their life. Seniors with low tolerance for friction who will simply stop using a product the moment it feels complicated. We helped Eargo solve this across several product generations. Every iteration was driven by watching where users dropped off and rebuilding around those moments. Not assuming a working product would be a used product. That's the key phase, watching the problems, not assuming them. Eargo achieved FDA Class 2 compliance and the user base that kept coming back because the experience was designed around actual behavior, not an idealized version of it. The companies that get adoption right treat it as a product discipline, not a sales or marketing problem. So 3 questions to answer before you ship. How does this tool fit into the exact moment someone would actually use it? What happens when the user skips a day? Is there a recovery path? And does the user ever see the value of their own data reflected back to them? Without that feedback loop, engagement collapses every time. If your product can answer, why would someone open this again tomorrow? That's not a retention problem. That's a design problem. This one catches technically strong teams more than weak ones, which makes it particularly dangerous. Imagine a successful pilot, 20 hospitals, 80 clinicians, the product worked. You sign your first enterprise contract, and then you try to scale, and everything broke. Why? Because the architecture was never designed for what scale actually demands. Your MVP was optimized for one thing, proving the core idea works. Fast to build, light on infrastructure, good enough for a pilot. But the decision made under that pressure, how data is stored, how systems integrate, how the product handles thousands of concurrent users, create technical debt that becomes exponentially more expensive to fix later. Performance degrades under real load. Data pipelines that work in a controlled environment can handle the messiness of real patient data at volume. Security controls that were good enough for a pilot fail enterprise scrutiny. Vave Health makes portable, wireless ultrasound solutions. Over 1 million scanning sessions since 2019. As the product grew, they knew the architecture needed to change. IoT connectivity was redesigned for reliable at scale. The entire user experience was rebuilt from scratch, prioritizing simplicity for medical professionals who need the device to work correctly every time. If it had been patched instead of rebuilt, the product would have failed under enterprise load. Vave successfully relaunched and is widely used by medical professionals across the US. The fix isn't to over-engineer MVP, it's to make more explicit decisions and what you're deferring, and build a scalability roadmap before the first enterprise contract is signed, not after. The teams that navigate this well treat their MVP architecture as a set of deliberate trade-offs with known expiration dates. They know which decisions will need revisiting at 10x scale, and they plan for that conversation before it becomes a crisis. Because by the time you're in a signed contract with a health system, it's too late to say your architecture needs 6 months of refactoring. Almost every health tech team says some version of this at some point. We'll handle compliance later. Right now, we need to move fast. I always advise against it. In most industries, deferring compliance is pragmatic. In healthcare, it's a time bomb. You hit a market that requires CE marking, or an enterprise client whose procurement process requires FDA classification documentation, and suddenly we'll handle compliance later, has a price tag measured in months, not weeks. So here's a concrete example. HIPAA requires that every access to patient's data be logged with a timestamp, a user ID, and a reason. If your database wasn't designed with that in mind, if you build fast and skipped traceability, adding it later means touching every data access point in your code base. That's a significant refactor. Similarly, if your product touches clinical decisions, making in any way, you're likely looking at FDA oversight under the software as a medical device framework. Teams that didn't maintain design history files and risk management records from the start often can't reconstruct what they need for a submission. Remedee Labs built the first wearable electronic endorphin stimulator, a non-pharmaceutical solution for chronic pain management. From day one, it was a clinically validated medical device, and the regulatory path reflected that. Every data point, every stimulation session, every patient interaction was traceable and defensible under clinical scrutiny. The team continuously adapted based on clinical study results, treating regulatory requirements as an ongoing design constraint, not a final checklist. In 2023, Remedee Labs became the first CE-marked medical device approved for the treatment of fibromyalgia in Europe. That milestone wasn't achieved despite the compliance work. It was achieved because of it. 3 things to take away. First, classify your product early. Know whether you're building a software as a medical device, a wellness tool, or something in between. The answer changes everything downstream. Second, build traceability from the start. Third, design your compliance UX deliberately. The flows that support audit requirements should be designed, not bolted on. The earlier you treat compliance as a first-class product concern, the cheaper it is to carry. The 5th reason is the quietest one and the most avoidable. Launch day is not the finish line. In HealthTech, it's closer to the end of the beginning. But a surprising number of products are built as if launch is the destination. The roadmap ends at V1, the team moves on, post-market monitoring becomes a support function, not a product function. And within 6 to 12 months, what was a competitive product starts to drift. A clinician workflow changes, the product doesn't adapt. A new device generation ships, the app fails out of sync. Regulatory requirements evolve, the product doesn't keep pace. None of these are dramatic failures. There are slow, quiet degradations. And by the time the problem shows up in your metrics, you're already 6 months behind. Elvie is the world's first wireless, wearable, silent, smart breast pump. We worked with Elvie across 2 products, the trainer and the pump, over 11 years. 3 native mobile apps built and maintained, and the critical world is maintained, not shipped and handed off. Connected hardware creates a specific post-launch risk. Every time a new generation of the pump shipped, the app had to remain compatible. Sometimes across different Bluetooth APIs, different firmware behaviors, different device expectations. Mid-collaboration, we conducted a full code audit on the trainer app, not because something broke, because long-term scalability and security requires it. When we started working with Elvie on the trainer, the company had around 3 to 5 people. By 2022, it had grown to over 200 and became a fintech market leader. That growth happened because someone always owned the next generation of the product. A shipped product is static. An owned product is adaptive. 3 takeaways. Assign explicit post-launch product ownership before you ship, not after the first problem surfaces. Instrument your product for post-marketing monitoring from day one. You can't iterate on what you can't measure. And plan your V2 roadmap before V1 launches, because the window between launch and the first competitive pressure is shorter than the most teams expect. There is never a moment where the product is done. In HealthTech, a product that stops evolving doesn't stay still. It falls behind. And falling behind in healthcare has a real consequences for the business and for the patients, depending on it. So here's what these 5 reasons have in common. They all describe the same underlying mistake: building for a launch event instead of building for a product lifecycle. And none of them are death sentences, if you catch them early enough. The HealthTech products that survive are built by teams who stayed close to the clinical environment before building, who designed for adoption, not just functionality, who planned for scale before the first enterprise contract, who treated compliance as a design constraint, and who kept owning the product long after the launch celebration was over. From my experience, that's the pattern. Not luck, not founding, not marketing timing, though all of those matter. The durable products are the ones where someone at every stage was asking the right questions at the right moment. If any of these 5 reasons feels familiar right now, that's actually a good sign. It means you're asking the right question early enough for it to matter.